1. Your wounds weren't wasted, they were workouts for your witness. You thought that pain was punishment, but it was preparation. You thought it was rejection, but it was redirection. Every scar, every silent night, every tear-stained pillow was God doing push-ups in your purpose. Pain builds a platform not by avoiding suffering, but by surviving it. The very thing that tried to break you became the weight that trained you. Like Denzel might say, ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. Your witness comes from what you've walked through, not what you avoided. Don't hide the wound, Usit. 2. The struggle gave you a stage, now speak from it. You didn't just survive the fire, you learned how to walk through it. Now don't whisper your testimony, stand on that stage and shout it. Your platform isn't built on perfection, it's built on process. You don't get the mic until you've learned how to manage the mess. When Denzel talks, it's never about the easy wins, it's about the valleys that made the voice. Your struggle gave you substance, and that substance, that's your sound. That's what the world needs to hear. 3. If you didn't bleed in private, you wouldn't have power in public. We want the applause, but we don't want the agony. We want the stage, but not the stretching. But hear me, you can't carry an anointing you didn't earn in the dark. There's a weight behind your words when they've come through weeping. The greatest speeches come from the greatest suffering. Denzel doesn't play character. She becomes them because he's tapped into real, raw, lived experience. In the same way, your platform will only carry power if it's been crushed, pressed, and tested. 4. God used your setback as the setup for a stage. They thought they buried you, but they didn't know you were a seed. That pain wasn't the end, it was the entrance. It looked like it was over. It felt like failure. But heaven was building a platform underneath your pain. Just like Denzel says, fall forward. Because when you fall forward, you land on something. You land on grace, you land on wisdom, you land on purpose. And that stage you're standing on today, it's made of everything you thought would break you. 1. Your wounds weren't wasted. They were workouts for your witness. There's a moment that arrives in every journey when the weight gets too heavy, the light gets too dim, and the path becomes too unclear. It's in that moment you start to wonder, what was the point of all this pain? Why did I have to cry those tears in silence? Why did I have to walk through seasons where no one understood me, no one encouraged me, and no one seemed to care? You look back and see a trail of broken pieces, shattered expectations, crushed hopes, and bleeding dreams. And yet, you're still here, still standing, still breathing. And you think that survival is all there is. But what if I told you, the pain wasn't a pause, it was the preparation? What if every wound you've suffered was actually a workout in disguise? What if the dark room you suffered in was the very place your strength was developed, your resilience was formed, and your testimony was birthed? There's a misconception that pain is punishment, that when life hurts, you must have done something wrong. That suffering is a sign that you're off course, that you missed the mark, or that God has forgotten you. But the truth is, pain isn't always an enemy. Sometimes pain is the prophet. Pain speaks a language that comfort cannot. It shows you who you are, what you can survive, what you're made of, and what's inside of you that ease could never reveal. It unlocks a depth in you that success can't reach. Pain doesn't just visit, it teaches. It doesn't just break, it builds. Because while comfort may preserve your pride, pain will prepare your purpose. Comfort coddles your convenience, but pain chisels your character. Those wounds you tried to hide, they are now the very proof that you lived through something. They are the receipts of your resilience. They are the journal entries written in the ink of endurance. You didn't just survive, you were trained. You didn't just cry, you were conditioned. You didn't just suffer, you were strengthened. When you got betrayed, your trust wasn't just broken, it was being rebuilt stronger. When you got abandoned, your self-worth didn't shrink, it deepened. When you were overlooked, it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. Because what tried to destroy you only developed you. What was meant to end, you actually equipped you. The problem is we're so used to seeing pain as a problem that we forget pain has a purpose. Growth doesn't come on the mountaintop. It comes in the valley. That's where your roots dig deep. That's where you learn to depend, not on applause, not on accolades, not on affirmation, but on the anchor within. The anchor that says, I know this hurts, but I'm not quitting. I know this feels like loss, but I'm not letting go. I know this looks like the end, but I believe something's being built beneath the surface. Because the truth is, you don't just go through pain, you grow through it. Pain is the gym where perseverance does its reps. It's where patience lifts heavy disappointment. It's where discipline runs laps through discouragement. You think you were breaking down, but you were being broken open. You think the storm was sent to shake you, but it was sent to shape you. You think the silence was a curse, but it was actually space being cleared so your voice could rise from experience, not from ego. You had to go through it so you could talk about it with power, not pretense. You had to feel the heat so you could carry the fire. You had to face the pressure so you could handle the platform. Some of the greatest voices, the most impactful leaders, the most anointed people, they didn't get there because of talent. They got there because of trials. They didn't rise because of comfort, they rose because of crushing. They didn't get there by being protected, they got there by being processed. Processed through heartbreak, through betrayal, through disappointment, through sickness, through sleepless nights, through seasons of silence where no one clapped, no one posted, no one praised, and yet they kept moving. That's what pain does. It teaches you how to move without applause, how to speak without a stage, how to believe without seeing, how to stand even when everything around you screams, sit down. How to build when all you have are broken pieces. How to dream again with tears in your eyes. How to show up with a limp, not because you're weak, but because you've wrestled and won. Your witness was not formed in the light, it was forged in the dark. When no one knew your name, when you had to encourage yourself, when you had to clap for yourself, when you had to put your own hand on your own back and say, you're going to make it. When you had to sing to yourself while your heart was bleeding. When you had to get up with swollen eyes, broken confidence, and still act like you believed. That's not fake, that's faith. That's not pretending, that's persistence. Because your witness isn't built on what you say, it's built on what you survive. You see, a platform without pain is just a performance. It's hollow, it's thin, it lacks the weight that moves people. But when you've been through something, your words carry something. They carry authority, they carry presence, they carry experience. Because you're not just speaking from theory, you're speaking from testimony. You're not just telling a story, you are the story. And that story has power, not despite the pain, but because of it. The platform you're being called to isn't built with bricks of ease, it's built with bricks of endurance. Each one laid down with every time you chose to keep going when quitting felt easier, every time you forgave when bitterness begged for a home, every time you kept your integrity when no one was looking, every time you prayed and saw no results, yet kept praying anyway. Every time you lost but didn't let it steal your identity. Every time you served others while starving inside. Every time you sacrificed, showed up, stayed faithful, stood tall. Those moments weren't wasted. They were weightlifting for your calling. They were your workouts. And now, you're stronger than you know. People think strength is found in volumine noise, in display, in dominance. But true strength is often silent. It shows up in the quiet choices, in the still moments when no one is watching, in the daily decision to keep showing up, to keep loving, to keep believing, to keep standing. Even when the world has no idea what it took just to make it through the morning. That quiet strength, that's what makes your witness unstoppable. What's wild is, some of the most painful seasons are the ones that produce the most beautiful fruit. You don't realize it when you're in it. But the pruning, the cutting away, the stripping down, it's all making room for something deeper, something purer, something stronger to grow. You thought you were being punished, but you were being positioned. You thought you were being buried, but you were being planted. The soil was dark, it was cold, and no one could see you. But that's where roots grow. That's where faith is formed. That's where strength is born. And when you start to rise, it's not with arrogance, it's with authority. Because you know what it took. You know what you survived. You know what tried to kill you but couldn't. And now, you don't speak from hype, you speak from history. This is what makes your platform undeniable. It's not how polished you are, it's how processed you've been. It's not your perfection, it's your perseverance. That's what people connect with. Not someone who's never cried, but someone who cried and kept moving. Not someone who never fell, but someone who got up every single time. Not someone who avoided pain, but someone who transformed through it. So don't curse the wound. Don't hide the scar. Don't be ashamed of the season that hurt you. That's the evidence. That's the key. That's the thing that will unlock somebody else's healing. Somebody's waiting to hear your story. Somebody's hanging on the edge, thinking it's over for them, and all they need is your voice to remind them they're not alone. But you can't minister to wounds you're still hiding. You can't help people escape darkness if you're pretending you never lived there. The beauty of your witness is that it's raw, it's real, it's unfiltered, and that's exactly what the world needs. Not another polished product, but a real person. Someone who can say, I've been through the fire, I've walked through the valley, I've cried until I couldn't cry anymore, but I'm still here, and not just barely stronger, wiser, sharper, more grounded, more compassionate, more clear. That kind of voice doesn't come from study alone, it comes from surviving, it comes from the storm. And the storm, though it was loud, didn't drown you, developed you. So now when you stand up and speak, you don't have to force it. You don't have to fake it. You don't have to fabricate anything. You simply show up with your wounds, with your lessons, with your limp, with your wisdom, and you let the weight of your witness do the talking. Because there's a force behind someone who's suffered and didn't get bitter. There's a power behind someone who's lost and still loves. There's a fire behind someone who's been forgotten and still shows up for others. That kind of spirit can't be taught. It's earned in the dark, in the quiet, in the struggle, in the pain. And now, that pain has become your platform. 2. The struggle gave you a stage. Now speak from it. You didn't ask for the storm, but you survived it. You didn't sign up for the heartbreak, but you carried it. You didn't choose the trial, but you walked through it. And now, you find yourself here standing on the other side, stronger, wiser, more focused, more determined. And yet, something inside you still wonders if the struggle was for nothing. If the late nights, the silent tears, the unanswered prayers, the internal battles were all just chapters of chaos with no resolution. But you need to hear this clearly. The struggle didn't just scar you, shaped you. It didn't just test your faith, it trained your voice. It didn't just break you down, it built you up. The struggle gave you a stage, not for show, not for spotlight, but for substance. Now speak from it. You see, everyone wants a platform, but not everyone's willing to pay the price for it. Everybody wants to be heard, but not everybody has the depth that comes from being hurt and healed. There's a difference between noise and voice. Noise comes from wanting attention. Voice comes from walking through affliction. And when you speak from pain, not performance, something happens. People don't just listen, they lean in. Because struggle gives your story a soul. It gives your words a weight. It gives your truth a texture that can't be duplicated. You don't need to memorize lines or mimic anyone. You've got your own story, forged in the fire of your own life. But too many people are silent when they should be speaking. They're hiding the very thing that could be healing someone else. They're ashamed of the past that's supposed to be their platform. They're tucking away their testimony because they think it disqualifies them, when in reality, it's the thing that qualifies them the most. You didn't survive just to stay silent. You didn't endure all that just to be invisible. There's somebody out there walking through what you already overcame. Somebody is drowning in what you already defeated. And your voice could be the lifeline that pulls them out of it. But not if you keep your mouth closed. Not if you pretend you were never broken. Not if you act like you never bled. Your struggle has value because it's your validator. It proves you've been there. It proves you know what it's like to lose and still love, to weep and still worship, to fall and still rise. That kind of journey isn't taught in classrooms. It's lived in trenches. And now that you've made it out, don't waste what you went through. Don't sanitize your scars. Don't clean up your past to make it more palatable for people who never carried your pain. Because real always recognizes real. And when you speak from the place of your struggle, people know it. They feel it. It resonates. We live in a world full of echoes, but the ones who truly make an impact are the originals, the ones who stopped copying and started confessing. Confessing where they've been, what they've learned, what they had to survive. What almost took them out but didn't. What almost killed them but couldn't. Your story is more than an experience, it's a message. It's a declaration. A war cry for somebody else who thinks they're losing. But if you hide it, you're robbing someone of their breakthrough. And don't let the size of the stage deceive you. A stage isn't always a spotlight. Sometimes it's a coffee shop conversation. Sometimes it's a social media post. Sometimes it's a classroom, a church pew, a living room, a whispered moment in the hallway. But it's still a stage. Every time you open your mouth to speak life where you once experienced loss, that's a stage. Every time you encourage someone else with the lessons you learned through fire, that's a stage. And you earned that stage not through fame, but through fight, through suffering, through survival. And no one can take that away from you. There are people waiting to hear from someone who's real, someone who's not speaking from theory, but from truth, someone who knows what it's like to be forgotten and still forgives, someone who's been rejected and still reaches out, someone who's been disappointed and still dares to dream. That someone is you, and the very struggle you thought disqualified you is what makes you credible. You know what it's like to pray and hear nothing, to trust and be betrayed, to give and be taken advantage of, to build and watch it fall apart, and you're still here, not just here but standing, with something to say, with something to give, with something to impart. But the question is, will you speak? Will you stop playing small with a story that could set somebody free? Will you stop shrinking your voice because you're afraid of who won't like it, or who won't approve of it, or who won't understand it? You weren't built to be liked, you were built to be light. And light shines best in dark places, the places you came from, the places others are still stuck in. You're the proof that struggle doesn't mean stop, that failure doesn't mean final, that brokenness doesn't mean buried. And don't discount the years that no one saw, the seasons where you were becoming something greater in silence, where you were growing in isolation, where the stage was being built under your feet while you were still on your knees. You may not have known it then, but your struggle was laying the foundation for your future voice. Because people don't want to hear from someone who's never been through anything. They want to hear from someone who's been in the mud and made it out, someone who's been in the dark and found the light, someone who's lived through hell and still carries hope. You're that person, not because you're perfect, not because you figured everything out, but because you're willing to speak anyway, to tell the truth anyway, to open your heart anyway. That's what makes your stage powerful. It's not about polish, it's about presence. It's not about being flawless, it's about being faithful. Faithful to the process, faithful to the purpose, faithful to the story you live so others don't have to walk alone. And when you speak, don't dilute it, don't downplay it, don't decorate it. Speak it raw, speak it real. Speak it like someone's life depends on it, because it might. Let the tears flow if they come. Let your voice crack if it must. But don't you dare let fear keep you silent. Fear has silenced too many voices for too long. Voices that should have been on stages but were stuck in shame. Voices that should have been declaring freedom but were still locked in fear. Don't let that be you. The truth is, your greatest impact won't come from what you know, it'll come from what you've lived through. People can Google information, but they can't Google your journey. They can't Google your resilience. They can't download your fight. That's the part only you can give. That's the value only you can offer. That's the voice only you can release. And once you realize that, once you see that your voice has weight because it came from wounds, you stop trying to impress and you start trying to impact. You stop trying to perform and you start trying to pour. Pour into the hurting, pour into the hopeless, pour into the ones who've been told they'll never rise. Because you're living proof that the struggle didn't win, that the pain didn't last forever, that the night eventually broke into morning, and you get to carry that morning to others who are still sitting in darkness. But you must decide, will you use your voice or will you mute your mission? Will you step into the space you were shaped for, or will you keep hiding in the shadow of fear? Because the truth is, comfort zones don't build change makers. Familiar places don't raise up freedom bringers. Stages don't belong to the silent. They belong to the ones who choose to rise in spite of the weight, in spite of the past, in spite of the insecurity, in spite of the trembling hands and pounding heart. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to speak anyway. So speak. Speak from the ashes. Speak from the breakthrough. Speak from the healing. Speak from the pain. Speak from the pages you've turned. Speak from the battlefields you've walked through. Speak from the strength that now lives in your voice. Because when you speak from struggle, you don't need a mic to be heard. Your presence carries the power. Your authenticity makes the difference. Your truth breaks chains. You've already earned the stage now. It's time to step up and speak from it. 3. You had to lose it to learn it. There are some lessons life will never teach you while you're winning. Some truths you'll never grasp when you're comfortable. Some wisdom you can't reach until you fall flat on your face and taste the dust of your own disappointment. Pain is the professor that comfort can never be. It's only when things break apart that you start to see what actually holds you together. You had to lose it to learn it. That's the kind of growth no textbook can prepare you for. That's the kind of maturity no mentor can hand to you. That's the kind of breakthrough that only comes after everything you thought you needed was stripped away, and all you were left with was yourself and your God-given grit. You thought the loss was a setback, but it was a classroom. You thought the failure was a finish line, but it was actually the start of your real development. See, when you lose something you thought you couldn't live without, and you realize you're still breathing, still standing, still moving, something powerful awakens inside you. You learn that you're stronger than you knew, that you can survive what you thought would shatter you, that you can rise with less than you started with and still become more than you imagined. Everybody wants the lesson without the loss. Everybody wants the wisdom without the wounds. But some things only break open when your heart does. Some truths only surface when the rug's been pulled out from under you. You had to lose it to learn it. That job, that relationship, that plan, that version of yourself that wasn't built for where you're going. Because if you had kept everything you wanted, you would have missed everything you needed. The blessing wasn't in what state it was, in what left. The revelation didn't come from being full, it came from being emptied. Losing isn't just about grief, it's about gaining new ground. It's about discovering the layers of yourself that were buried under the weight of things that were never meant to last. And yeah, it hurts. It's supposed to. Growth feels like grief when it's happening. Evolution feels like pain when you're in the middle of it. But once you come out on the other side, you realize you wouldn't trade it. Because the loss gave you what comfort never could. It gave you clarity. It gave you identity. It gave you resilience. It gave you a perspective that can't be bought or borrowed. And now that you've learned what you needed to learn, you don't move the same way. You don't beg for validation. You don't chase after what drains you. You don't settle for surface level when you were built for depth. You don't cling to people who walk away. You don't lose sleep over doors that close. You've been through too much to be shaken by small things. You've lost too much to be controlled by fear. You've cried too many nights to be silenced by opinions. When you've lost and lived through it, something shifts. You don't live to impress, you live to express. You express purpose, power, perspective. You carry the kind of strength that only comes from the other side of brokenness. But that strength didn't come cheap. It cost you time, it cost you pride, it cost you comfort, it cost you pieces of yourself you never thought you'd have to let go of. And now that you've paid the price, don't you dare walk like you're worthless. Don't you dare shrink back like you don't deserve to be here. You didn't just survive loss, you grew through it. You didn't just endure pain, you expanded in it. So walk with your head high, not because everything went right, but because you didn't quit when everything went wrong. You had to lose that opportunity to find your calling. You had to lose that version of success to discover significance. You had to lose the crowd to meet your real crew. You had to lose your comfort zone to tap into your real capacity. That's what people don't understand. They only see the comeback, they didn't witness the collapse. They see the strength, they didn't see the struggle. They see the platform, but they didn't see the pain that paved the way. And while some are busy counting what they gained, you're out here honoring what you lost. Because everything you lost taught you something you carry today. You lost the applause, but you gained authenticity. You lost the spotlight, but you found your soul. You lost the illusion of control, but you gained unshakable trust. And those are the things that can't be measured by status or likes or followers. Those are the riches of the soul, the kind of wealth that storms can't steal, the kind of treasure that grows in the soil of loss. There's power in losing if you let it teach you. There's power in pain if you lean into it. Because sometimes the thing that looks like it's falling apart is really just falling into place. Sometimes you have to be stripped down so you can be built up right. Sometimes the fire isn't there to burn you, it's there to refine you. And if you keep avoiding the loss, you'll keep postponing the lesson. If you keep running from the pain, you'll keep missing the power. Some of the most powerful people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who had the most, they're the ones who lost the most and still chose to love, to serve, to build, to believe. Because when you've lost everything and still choose to show up, still choose to speak life, still choose to reach out, you become unstoppable. You're not moved by convenience because your calling was born in chaos. You're not intimidated by pressure because your power was birthed in pain. You don't fear losing anymore because you already know how to rebuild. You didn't just lose time, you gained patience. You didn't just lose support, you gained self-reliance. You didn't just lose direction, you gained divine clarity. That's the trade, that's the transformation. That's how pain becomes platform. That's how loss becomes legacy. You stop living for applause and start living from alignment. You stop performing and start walking in purpose. But hear this, you have to give yourself permission to process the loss. Don't rush past it, don't bury it, don't minimize it. The only way to learn from it is to be honest about it. To let yourself feel the ache of what left. To let yourself grieve what didn't last. Because if you skip the grieving, you miss the growing. Pain that isn't processed becomes baggage. But pain that is processed becomes breakthrough. You carry it differently. It doesn't weigh you down, it lifts others up. Because now you speak from empathy, not ego. Now you lead from understanding, not performance. Now you pour from a place of truth, not pretense. And when you look back, you start to thank God not just for what you gained, but for what you lost. Because you realize that some of the greatest blessings came disguised as breakdowns. Some of your most powerful revelations came in the darkest rooms. Some of your deepest prayers were born from your lowest points. And if you hadn't lost what you did, you wouldn't be who you are. So keep walking, keep building, keep growing. Don't let the losses define you, let them develop you. Don't let the pain paralyze you, let it prepare you. Because every scar tells a story. Every crack lets the light in. Every loss makes space for something greater. You didn't just lose, you learned. You didn't just fall, you found something deeper. You didn't just suffer, you were shaped. You had to lose it to learn it. And now that you've learned, there's no going back. Only forward, only deeper, only stronger. Because the pain made the platform, but the loss made you listen. And when you learn to listen in the loss, you unlock a version of yourself you never knew existed.